To make this cowl, you will need worsted weight yarn of your choice in whatever color. I used Vanna's Choice Honey for this cowl, and I used about 100 to 150 grams of worsted weight yarn. You will also need 6mm needles, circular knitting needles. I used a 29-inch cord when I was knitting in the rows because I like to knit the rows on a long cord. And then when I switched to the round, I used the 24-inch cord with my circular knitting needles. You'll also need some scissors, a stitch marker, a yarn needle, and something to measure your work by. Also, to add the tassels on at the end, I used a small crochet hook, but that is optional. All right, let's get started. Let's begin our easy 2-row repeat knit cowl. I know you're going to love this stitch, guys. Okay, so begin with leaving a little bit of a tail, and we're going to cast on 3. Okay, so there's 2, 1 more, 4, 3. All right, so now we've got our cast on of 3. We're going to turn our work, and all odd rows, so number 1, 3, 5, all those odd rows, they're going to be our increase rows. All of our even rows, our stitch count is going to stay the same, and you're just going to follow a pattern for that even row. Okay, so this first one is just our setup here, so they're not going to always be the same increase on the first stitch, okay? When we get to further rows, the increases will be on the second stitch in and the second last stitch from the end. But for this first one, because there's only the 3 stitches, this first stitch is going to be our increase here, stitch. So we're going to go and knit in the front. Okay, so I've inserted my needle from the front to knit. I'm going to pull up, pull a little yarn to have some working room so that I can scooch around back, insert my needle into the back of that exact same stitch, and knit through the back. Okay? So that's my first increase. The second stitch here, I'm just going to knit. And then in my last, I'm going to increase. So I'm going to knit in the front, pull up some yarn for some working room to move around the back, and knit in the back. Nice. Now we've got 5 stitches on our needle. Okay, so that was our first increase row. We're going to turn our work. Now this is just going to be a kind of a stitch pattern that's going to create that beautiful stitch for your cowl. And this is always going to be the same, this even row. So for the first stitch, really important, we're going to keep the yarn to the front of our work. Okay. Then we're going to insert our needle into the back of that stitch. Okay, right there. We're just going to slip that off and then bring our yarn around the back. Okay, now really important, our yarn stays at the back the full time we're working on these even rows. We're going to insert our needle purlwise. We're going to slip. Second, knit. Insert purlwise, yarn at the back, slip, and then knit. Okay, so that was row 2. Our stitch count stayed the same, it's still at 5. We're going to turn our work. Okay, so now here's how all of our increase rows are going to go from here on out. We're going to keep that yarn in the front. Okay, we're going to insert our needle to the back of that first stitch. We're just going to slip that off. So slip, always slip that first stitch on every row. Now we're going to do our increase on the second stitch in. So knit in the front, pull up our yarn, knit in the back. We're going to knit until we get to the second last stitch. So knit all the way up. This row is easy because there's only the one there. Now you see there's two left on the hook or on the needle. This second last one is going to be our increase. So knit in the front, pull up your yarn, knit through the back for an increase. Last stitch is a knit. Okay, so that was our increase row. That was row 3. So now we have 7 stitches on our needle. We're going to turn our work. Okay, now this is an even row. Row 4, I believe. So keeping your yarn to the front, very important. Always with your first stitch is going to slip off with that yarn in front. Inserting your needle through the back of the stitch, slipping it off, and that's just going to create a nice edging all the way up the side for you. Okay, so even rows, no increases. We're going to keep that yarn in the back. We're going to insert purlwise. We're going to slip. We're going to keep this pattern going, so slip, knit, and you're going to repeat those 2 slip knit for the rest of the row. So keeping the yarn in back, inserting purlwise, slip, knit, slip, knit. Okay, turn our work. Now we're on an odd numbered row. We're going to keep our yarn in the front for that first stitch where we slip it off. Okay. We're going to slip. And here's our increase on that second one. So just be careful, sometimes they kind of like to get together there because this here was a slip from the last row. So sometimes it likes to squeeze in beside, so make sure you've got it there for your increase. So we're going to knit in the front, knit in the back. Knit until you get to the second last stitch of the row. And this one again is kind of likes to tuck in close to the other stitches because it was a slip from the last stitch. So just be wary of that. We're going to increase in that last stitch. Knit in the front, knit in the back, and then our last stitch is just a knit. Nice. So now we should have 9 on the row, or 9 on the needle. Okay, turn our work. So this is an odd numbered row. Keeping your yarn to the front for that first one, we're just going to slip it off and then bring our yarn to the back. Now the yarn always stays in the back. We're going to insert purlwise, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit. Okay. So one more time, I'll show you the increase. Grab some yarn here. Okay, yarn stays to the front. I insert my needle into the back and always slip that first stitch off and then bring your yarn around the back. We're going to increase on our second stitch from the beginning. So knit in the front, knit in the back. Knit each stitch in the row until you get to the second last stitch of the row. You can see there where these two look a little bit close together. Okay, in that second last one, we're going to increase, knit in the front, knit in the back. On the last, we just knit. So there's our increase. Okay, we're going to turn our work, and the second repeat in the rows on our even rounds. Yarn in front, we're going to slip from the back, bring our yarn around the back, slip purlwise, and then slip, knit, slip, knit. Repeat those 2 stitches to the end of the row. Slip, knit, slip, knit, oops, slip, knit. And just repeat those 2 rows. Okay, I'm going to work my stitches up a little bit larger, and then I just want to point out a few things for you, and I'll tell you where to continue on to get to before we begin to join in the round. So here I've knit up a little further so you can see the pattern starting to form. So this is what the cowl or scarf here will look like when you're wearing it. It's got a very pretty design with those threads kind of looping in front of the other stitches. Very beautiful. So a couple of tips that I just want to point out to you when you're knitting in the rows for this pattern repeat is the first tip I have for you is this is the right side of your work. Okay, so when this is facing you, and say you're going up in your rows and you forgot to count your rows, which is totally okay, you don't really have to with this pattern, but then you're like, oh, am I on an odd row or an even row? Well, if this is facing you, then you're going to be doing your increase. So if you're just about to knit, you've turned it and now this is facing you, you want to do your increase, so your odd row. Okay, so this is what the wrong side or the back side looks like. Okay, and if this is facing you and you're just about to begin and you're like, oh, wrong, odd row or even row, what am I on? This is an even row, so this is when you just do your slip, knit, slip, knit. So if you're just about to knit this row, which I'm just about to knit it, I'm a lefty, so I work from the other side. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but I'm just about to knit this row right here. Okay, so I would know, oh, I'm on an even row, I need to do my slip, knit, slip, knit. And then another thing I wanted to point out for you is that this pattern isn't set in its ways. So if you wanted to use a larger needle size to kind of get kind of more of a stretchy, droopy look here with your stitch pattern or your design in the front, then definitely try it out with the worsted weight yarn. Use bigger needles, use smaller needles, use different size yarns. Whatever, you're the designer, you're the maker, dream up whatever you want to dream up, right? So it's not really a static pattern. You can do it with anything, and it'll make it look beautiful with that pattern repeat. Okay, so Another tip that I want to give you is when you're working on this even row, so this slip, knit, I'm just going to begin it here. So always bring that yarn to the front, remember? And then I'm going to do just going to work it in here just a little ways. And then sometimes I get knitting this row, and it's a slip knit. So the slip knit pattern for me was a little bit different when I first did it. And then I would be knitting away and I'd say, oh geez, I get distracted, kids are calling me, dog wants let out, whatever happens, life, right? And then I'm like, did I just do a slip or a knit? I forget. So here's my tip, is that your yarn will be connected to this last stitch. See how it's coming out right there? So I know I just did a knit, and that now I need to do a slip. So when you've just done a slip, it's connected. Now you've got a stitch in between from where your yarn is, because that yarn is going to lay over top of that stitch to create our pattern in the front, right? So I know, oh, I've just done a slip because the yarn is connected to this second loop here on my working needle. So now I know I need to do a knit. And then here I know it's connected to this one right here, so I know I need to do a slip. So that's my tip for when you're knitting in that even row and you get sidetracked, life happens, and you're not sure. So now all you have to do for this pattern is keep working your rows back and forth, doing those repeat until you've got 23 inches. So we're going to be measuring at this top point here. So right now, as you can see, I've only got about 6 inches done. I need to keep knitting those rows until I get to 23 inches. And at that point, I'm going to join in the round, and I'm going to be joining when I'm just about to start an even row. So go until you get 23, knit that odd row, so the right side is facing you, you're just about to flip it and that wrong side is facing you. That's when you want to join. Okay, so meet me back when you've got your 23 inches. So here we've got the 23, actually I've got almost 24 inches here, lengthwise across the top of the cowl. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch from because I've been working on the long 29-inch cord. I'm going to switch that around now so that it's on a smaller cord. So I'm going to switch down to the 24-inch cord so that I can begin to knit in the round. So to do that, I'll show you what I do. So I'm going to need this needle to work all of my stitches off of, because I'm just about to knit a odd row, or the right side row, and that's when I switch, and then I join in the round when it becomes the wrong side, or the even row. So I'm going to take this guy off the other end that I would normally just keep knitting with. I'm going to switch my 6mm is what I've been working with here, my knitting needles, onto just my 24-inch cord. And then I'm going to take my kit here, and I'm going to grab one of these big 10mm, these guys. And I just do this, I guess you don't have to if you are knitting with other methods or whatever, but I'm going to put this big one mostly just as a stopper so that I don't lose the stitches as I'm knitting along. Okay, so I'm going to put another one here on the other end. It doesn't usually fall off of this long cord, but you never know, just in case, so that's why I do that. And then I'm going to take the end here with my 6, and I'm going to just knit as we were following our pattern. So slip the first one, and then in our second we do our knit front and back increase, and then just knit across. So meet me back here when you've got it all onto your 24-inch cord so that we can begin to knit in the round, and I'll show you what we do there. Okay, so here we are. I have knit this now onto the 24-inch cord, and now I have both of my ends. I've switched so that they're both the 6mm needle size. So what we're going to do now is we're going to join this work in the round. So because when we're knitting, we started with a stitch count of 3 and then we increased by 2 every other round. So our stitch count right now on the needle is an odd number. So we need to make that an even number. So we'll bring our work around so that it meets, so that we're now going to be knitting in the round. Okay, we're going to join this work, and it's going to be the right side of our work is going to be facing out now as we work our way around. Okay, so to begin, hold on here, I've just got the yarn's in the wrong position. I got to put that in the back. There, for my last one. Okay, so that was my last slip, and this is my first slip here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this last slip round, that last slip stitch from that last round, and then I'm going to take and I'm going to place a stitch marker just to mark the beginning of my rounds. Okay. So to begin, because I'm going to drop this count down from an odd number to an even number of stitches, because when we work around it's in multiples of 2 for our pattern that we follow. Okay, so I'm going to purl those guys together. So it'll be a nice little join right there when we get back to it. Okay, so that was our purl, and I knit those two kind of end pieces together. So now we're down, so we have an even number of stitches. So because we just did a row of where we just knit across, we did our increase. So now for normal, what we would have been working up would have been that even row where we did a slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit. So this one here is going to be a purl, keeping our yarn in front. We're going to slip, and then we're going to purl. Okay. Okay, I totally lost that one. Let's do that again. And then we're going to purl. All right. Keeping our yarn in front so that it slips across that stitch there to create that kind of nice pattern that we've got going. We're going to slip purlwise with the yarn in front. And then for the next stitch, we're going to do a purl, stitch. Okay, so we're going to continue that, working all the way around where we slip. Yarn's in the front now, not to the back. We're going to slip it purlwise so that yarn goes across our stitch there, and then we're going to purl. Okay, so continue that all the way around, and then meet me back up when you've got back to that beginning around to the stitch marker, just following that pattern. And you can see here too that we've just done our purl stitch because it's connected. So when we do our slip, just like before, now you can see that it goes across the stitch, so you can keep track of which one you're on. Okay, so purl, slip, all the way around, and meet me back when you get back to that stitch marker. Okay, so our last one there is a slip. Now we're going to move our marker. And for round 2 of knitting in the round is simply just knitting every stitch around. Okay. So just knit all the way around, and then meet me back when you've got to the stitch marker. Okay, and you've completed round 2. So just knitting all the way around. Okay, and meet me back when you've got back to the beginning. Okay, here we are. We're at the end of row 2 or round 2. So now for round 3, it's going to be the slip purl still, but because we started round 1, with purl and then slip. So we went purl, slip, slip. Now for round 3, we want to slip, purl, just so that we can jagged those out. We don't want all of our lines lining up. We want them to be kind of staggered. So we want to make sure that we go slip, keeping our yarn in front, just like we were, purl, okay, slip, purl, slip, purl, and we're going to do that all the way around, okay, until we get back here to the stitch mark, and I will meet you back when we get to that stitch marker. Okay, so our last one here was a purl, and now we're moving on to round 4. So our 4th round is again just a knit round. So we're just going to knit all the way around. Okay. And then for knitting in the round for this pattern, we're just going to repeat those 4 rounds. Okay, so purl, slip round, knit around, slip, purl, knit around. So repeat those 4 rounds until the height here from where we joined in the back up to here, okay, is about 5 inches. So repeating the 4 round repeat now until we get to 5 inches, and then meet me back when you've got those 5 inches, and I'll show you how we do the stretchy bind off. So here we've knit up to about 5 inches for the height from where we joined in the back up in the round. Now our cowl is starting to take on a nice look. Okay, so now we need to bind off. So for this we're going to do the stretchy bind off technique, and we do this because we want to be able to obviously have it stretch and get over our heads and everything. So to do the stretchy bind off, you're going to knit the first, okay, knit the second, and then we're going to keep that yarn in behind. We're going to insert the non-working needle into the front. We're going to wrap the yarn around the back, and we're going to pull that working yarn through those 2 stitches. Okay, so pull it tight when you wrap it around, and there we have it. So we're working here. These stitches will eventually work their way around. Okay, so knit 1 now that we've got it started. So we're always working with these 2 right here. We're going to insert into the front, wrap the yarn around, holding it snug, pull it through those 2 stitches. Okay, and pulling that working yarn through those 2 stitches is kind of what gives it that little extra give, that little extra room to make it a little bit of a stretchy bind off. And that'll help when you're trying to slip it over your head. Okay, so knit 1, working with these 2, insert in the front, and so sometimes, because this here is stuck to the cord, another trick that I like to do is I'll grab another needle here, just a bit of a smaller size, Not too small though. I'll just go half a size below. Or you can grab some double pointed needles. Okay. And then that way I'm not working fighting the cord and everything that's going around with this needle here. Or you can take and switch this one out so you have that exact size. However you want to do it, it's up to you. So knit one, pull through. Knit one, insert into the front, pull through into the back. So you're just going to continue doing that stretchy bind off. There you can see what it's starting to look like all the way around, and just keep doing it till you get to the beginning, and then weave in that end, weave in all your ends, and then you can add your tassels, and there you have it. You have this beautiful textured cowl.